The scent of honeysuckle and freshly cut grass usually soothed my soul, a gentle reminder of the simple pleasures I cherished in my retirement. But today, as I stepped out of my modest sedan and onto the sprawling manicured lawn of my son's estate, the air was thick with something else: the cloying sweetness of expensive perfumes, the aggressive thrum of a live band, and the unmistakable aroma of my daughter-in-law Brenda's carefully curated, ostentatious wealth. I am Mary, a dignified 65-year-old retiree. My life is quiet now, filled with gardening, volunteering at the local library, and the comforting rhythm of a routine I've chosen. My days of bustling through hospital corridors as a head nurse are long past, replaced by a serenity I wouldn't trade for all the riches in the world. But today, for my granddaughter Lily's 10th birthday, I had to re-enter a world that had long since dismissed me. I held a modestly wrapped gift in my hands. It wasn't flashy, just a simple brown paper, tied with twine, adorned with a sprig of dried lavender from my own garden. Inside, nestled amongst tissue paper, was a small, unassuming package. It was a gesture of love, carefully considered, deeply personal, and a testament to years of quiet planning. As I navigated the sea of impeccably dressed guests, a blur of designer labels and forced smiles, I spotted them. Lily, my granddaughter, a vision in a puffy pink dress, surrounded by a gaggle of equally pink-clad friends, and looming over her, a perfectly coiffed dragon in human form, my daughter-in-law Brenda. Brenda was a woman known for her relentless social climbing. Her ambition was as sharp as her perfectly manicured nails, and her disdain for my humble retirement was a barely concealed truth. She saw my quiet life, my modest home, and my simple clothes not as choices, but as failures. To her, I was an embarrassing relic, a living testament to a past she desperately wanted to erase from her lavish narrative. I took a deep breath and approached, a small smile on my face. "Happy birthday, my dear Lily," I said, extending the gift towards my granddaughter. Her eyes, usually so bright, glanced at the package with a fleeting, almost imperceptible dismissiveness. She was already being trained, I noted with a pang in my heart, to value flash over substance. Before Lily could even reach for it, Brenda materialized, a predatory glint in her perfectly made-up eyes. She swept between us, her designer handbag swinging, almost knocking the gift from my hand. She didn't bother with a greeting, her gaze fixed on the unassuming package. "Oh, that," Brenda scoffed, her voice dripping with condescension, loud enough for a few nearby guests to turn their heads. Her lips curled into a sneer. Someone useless like Mary couldn't possibly offer anything of value. With a theatrical flourish, she reached out, not to take the gift, but to haughtily brush the gift aside. My modest wrapped present went skittering across the pristine grass, coming to rest near a bush, a discarded piece of trash. A collective titter ran through the small cluster of guests who had now fully turned to observe the spectacle. My cheeks burned, not with shame for myself, but with indignation at Brenda's cruel public display. Lily, my granddaughter, instead of retrieving the gift or showing any sign of distress at her grandmother's public humiliation, simply echoed Brenda's sentiment, her voice surprisingly cold for a 10-year-old. "I don't need any gift from Grandma. I have everything I want." Her words, delivered with a practiced dismissiveness, stung more than Brenda's outright cruelty. My own granddaughter, my sweet Lily, had learned her lessons well. She had absorbed Brenda's disdain, regurgitating it almost perfectly. Just then, my son, David, appeared, pushing through the small crowd. He was a good man, at heart, I believed, but weak, too easily swayed by Brenda's ambitious demands, too eager to maintain the illusion of their perfect, wealthy life. His face was a mixture of discomfort and exasperation. He hadn't seen Brenda bat the gift away, but he saw the aftermath, the snickering guests, the tension. He didn't look at Brenda. He looked at me, his eyes filled with an awkward pleading. "Mom," he muttered, his voice barely audible, but firm enough to carry in the sudden hush. Maybe, maybe you should just go downstairs, for now, avoid further embarrassment. My son, my own flesh and blood, he was telling me to hide, to disappear, to spare them the embarrassment of my presence. The man I had nurtured, loved, sacrificed for, the man who somewhere deep down still carried a piece of the humble boy I raised. Now, he chose social standing over filial respect. The laughter and whispers from the guests grew louder, bolder. They were enjoying the show. The retired old nurse, publicly humiliated by her social climbing daughter-in-law and dismissed by her own son and granddaughter. It was a juicy piece of gossip for their cocktail parties. A strange calmness settled over me, chilling and precise. The initial humiliation, the sharp sting of betrayal, began to recede, replaced by a quiet, steel-like resolve. They wanted to make me small, to make me disappear. They wanted to prove that my worth was negligible, that my modest life made me utterly useless. I looked around the faces of the grinning guests, at Brenda's triumphant smirk, at David's embarrassed plea, at Lily's indifferent gaze. They had misjudged me, grossly. I slowly knelt, ignoring the discomfort in my old knees, and reached for the discarded package. The brown paper was slightly crumpled from where it had landed, the lavender sprig almost dislodged. My hands, once deft at bandaging wounds and administering medications, now gently smoothed the paper. A new hush fell over the crowd. Their snickering died down, replaced by a puzzled silence. They watched, intrigued, as I calmly, deliberately began to unwrap the gift. My movements were slow, methodical, each tear of the tape, each unfold of the paper, an act of silent defiance. Brenda's triumphant smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of confusion. David shifted uncomfortably, his brow furrowed. Even Lily, bored just moments ago, leaned forward slightly, a hint of curiosity in her eyes. The paper came away, revealing a plain legal-sized envelope, thick and official-looking. It wasn't sparkling. It wasn't a branded box from a luxury store. It was just paper, a manila envelope, unassuming and deceptively simple. But the moment I pulled out the contents, neatly folded and crisp, the entire atmosphere in the lavish garden shifted. The first thing they saw, emblazoned at the top, was the official seal of the county recorder's office, and just below it, in bold, undeniable print, Deed of Trust. A collective gasp rippled through the stunned crowd, louder and more shocked than any snicker. Brenda's eyes widened, her jaw dropping almost comically. David froze, his face draining of all color. Lily, too young to grasp the full implications, still sensed the sudden, profound shift in the air, her eyes fixed on the document in my hands. The deed clearly detailed a property. Not just any property. It was the charming, fully paid-off lakeside cottage that Brenda and David had been coveting for years. The one they'd whispered about, strategized over, hoping to acquire as a future investment for Lily when the current elderly owner finally passed. They had no idea that I, their useless mother, had been quietly negotiating its purchase for the past 2 years, saving every penny from my pension and odd jobs. And now, written clearly on the document, in the section for grantee, was the name of my granddaughter, Lily Anna Sterling. The realization slammed into them. The property, the very asset they had dreamed of for their daughter, had been given freely and irrevocably by the useless old woman they had just publicly shamed. The silence was no longer just awkward. It was thick with profound embarrassment, a suffocating weight of their own making. The joyful party atmosphere evaporated, replaced by palpable shame and an uncomfortable, inescapable quiet. The air, once sweet with perfume, now tasted bitter with their humiliation. The silence was a living, breathing thing, pulsating with the raw, exposed shame of Brenda David and a good portion of their snickering guests. My modest, twine wrapped package, now discarded on the manicured lawn, had held more power than any diamond necklace or luxury car they could ever flaunt. The deed of trust lay bare, its legal language a damning indictment of their avarice and my quiet strength. Lily's name, clear and bold as the grantee of the lakeside cottage, stood as irrefutable proof of my so-called worthlessness. My knees ached slightly as I straightened up, but a strange, exhilarating lightness filled me. The years of quiet slights, the whispered condescension, Brenda's thinly veiled contempt, all of it had coalesced into this single, potent moment. There was no triumph in my heart, no spiteful joy, only a profound, liberating clarity. They had underestimated me, not just my financial capacity, but my spirit. I looked at Brenda, her perfectly made up face contorted in a grotesque mask of shock and dawning horror. Her eyes darted from the deed to the silent, watchful faces of her socialite friends, then back to me, desperately trying to compute how her carefully constructed world had just been so casually, utterly dismantled. Her entire facade, built on outward appearances and perceived superiority, was crumbling before my eyes. David, my son, finally seemed to snap out of his stupor. His face was pale, his eyes wide with a dawning horror that was almost as painful to witness as Brenda's outright malice. He had seen the deed, seen Lily's name. He finally recognized the depth of his mistake and the magnitude of his mother's gesture. He saw not just the value of the property, but the profound, quiet love behind it, a love he had so carelessly dismissed. Without another word, I simply turned. I didn't need to explain, to gloat, or to lecture. My statement had been made, delivered with the quiet, devastating force of truth. The deed, lying innocently on the grass, spoke volumes louder than any shouted accusation. I began to walk slowly, deliberately, towards the exit. Each step was a measured rhythm, the sound of my sensible shoes a stark contrast to the aggressive thrum of the silenced band and the frantic, unspoken energy of the stunned crowd. The air, once heavy with false cheer, was now thick with palpable shame. "Mom! Mom! Wait!" David's voice, hoarse with desperation, cut through the silence. He lunged forward, pushing past a bewildered guest, his hand reaching out to grab my arm. He looked truly distraught, the veneer of his social climbing existence finally cracking under the pressure. He desperately tried to stop me, pleading with me to stay. I didn't break my stride. My pace remained steady, unhurried. His hand brushed my sleeve, but I gently, almost imperceptibly, pulled away. I didn't make eye contact. To do so would be to acknowledge the drama, to give them the stage they so desperately craved, to somehow fix this. This wasn't about a scene, it was about an exit. A final, definitive exit from their superficial world. Brenda, ever the pragmatist when her social standing was threatened, finally found her voice. Her initial shock morphed into a frantic scramble for damage control. "Mary, wait, please, don't go. Lily, darling, go tell Grandma Mary to stay." Her voice, usually so controlled, was shrill, bordering on panicked. She saw their social standing crumbling before her very eyes, the whispers among her friends already beginning, no doubt. The perfect birthday party had just become a catastrophic social faux pas. Lily, still dazed, took a hesitant step towards me, then stopped. She was a child caught in the crossfire of adult pride and shame, unsure what to do. I ignored their pleas. Their desperation was a sound I had heard before, usually from people clinging to a fleeting illusion. My path was clear, away from the manicured lawns and hollow smiles. I just kept walking, my back straight, my head held high. As I neared the gate, a few more guests, emboldened by David and Brenda's public display of distress, tried to interject. "Mrs. Miller, are you all right?" "Such a generous gift." "What's going on?" Their voices were a confused chorus, but I offered no explanations. My silence was my shield, and my dignity, my sword. I reached my car, the small sedan feeling like a sanctuary after the cacophony of the party. As I opened the driver's side door, I heard David's voice again, closer this time, almost pleading. "Mom, please, we can talk about this. Don't leave like this." I looked at him then, truly looked. His face was ravaged by regret, his eyes brimming with tears. For a moment, my old heart ached for him. The little boy I once knew, caught in the trap of a life he wasn't strong enough to control. But that little boy was long gone, replaced by a man who had chosen to stand by silently while his mother was humiliated. My voice was calm, steady, devoid of anger, but firm with an unshakable conviction. "David," I said, "I've said all I need to say, and I've given all I intend to give. The gift is for Lily. It always was." I got into the car, a serene smile gracing my lips. I started the engine, the familiar rumble a comforting sound. As I backed out of the driveway, I saw David standing there, alone on the vast lawn, Brenda now beside him, whispering furiously, gesticulating wildly towards my retreating car. The perfect party was in shambles, their carefully constructed image shattered by a single modest gift and an old woman's quiet resolve. I drove away, leaving behind the hushed whispers and the palpable shame. The setting sun cast long shadows over the Sterling estate, transforming its opulent grandeur into something almost ominous. The air outside my car window was cool, clean, and free from the suffocating pretense I had just escaped. The drive home was quiet, contemplative, the lake cottage. It was a beautiful place, a small rustic haven nestled by clear waters, surrounded by ancient trees. I had spent 2 years diligently saving, cutting corners, doing extra shifts at the library, picking up freelance editing work. My pension, though modest, was meticulously managed. I had poured my love and foresight into that property, imagining Lily spending summers there, creating memories, building a future away from the stifling materialism of her parents. It was meant to be a refuge, a gift of peace and simplicity. But now, after Brenda's scorn and David's betrayal, the cottage felt different. It was no longer just a gift. It was a weapon, a testament to a worth they refused to acknowledge until it benefited them. I realized, with a clarity that chilled me, that if I left the cottage in Lily's name, Brenda would inevitably seize control. She would sell it, flip it for profit, or turn it into another one of her pretentious investment properties, stripping it of any personal meaning. My gift, my gesture of love, would be desecrated. That night, alone in my quiet apartment, I made a decision. A radical one, perhaps, but one that felt profoundly right. I had tried to give them a piece of my heart, and they had spit on it. Now I would take back control. The next morning, the phone calls began. David, frantic, apologetic, pleading. "Mom, please, you can't be serious about that cottage. It's Lily's future. We can explain everything. Brenda didn't mean it. She was just stressed." His pleas were hollow, devoid of genuine remorse, only fear. Fear of losing the asset, fear of the social fallout. I listened patiently, my voice calm as I reiterated my decision. Then came Brenda's calls, shrill and demanding, then surprisingly, sickeningly sweet. "Mary, darling, you know how stressful parties are. I was just joking. We love you. Think of Lily. That cottage is perfect for her future. We can spend summers there. It'll be lovely. I simply hung up. Their words, once so cutting, now held no power over me. Their desperation was pathetic. I called my lawyer, a kind, astute woman named Ms. Chen, who had handled my modest affairs for years. Ms. Chen, I began, my voice steady, I need you to prepare the documents. I'm selling the lakeside cottage. A pause on the other end. Mary? The one you just transferred to your granddaughter? Yes, I confirmed. I understand there will be legal complexities, but I want to revoke the gift. It was given under duress, under terms of love and respect that were immediately violated. I am confident we can find a legal basis. Ms. Chen, knowing my character, understood. Understood, Mary. It won't be easy, but we'll explore every avenue. And what do you plan to do after the sale? I smiled, a genuine, peaceful smile that reached my eyes. I'm going to move into the Golden Pines retirement community. I've researched it. They have beautiful gardens, wonderful activities, and excellent care. It's exactly what I need. But Mary, your son and daughter-in-law will be devastated, Miss Chen gently reminded me. They had their chance, I said, my voice unwavering. They chose to define my worth, not by my love, but by their prejudice. Now I choose to define my own peace. The cottage was a symbol of my love. Now it will fund my independence, and I intend to enjoy every single moment of it, far away from their judgments. The decision was final. I knew they would fight it. They would plead, they would beg, they would probably even try to shame me again, but their words would fall on deaf ears. My statement had been made. My worth was not up for debate, and my future, though humble, was entirely my own. The gift had been unveiled, and so had their true nature, and I, Mary, had chosen my path, a path of quiet strength, self-respect, and absolute freedom. The drive home from Lily's party had been peaceful, a soothing balm after the acid bath of my son's opulent lawn. But the days that followed were anything but. My phone, usually a quiet companion, became a relentless tormentor. Despite frantic calls and desperate pleas from David and Brenda, who now saw the true value of their mother-in-law and the property, I remained resolute. Their voices, once filled with dismissive superiority or embarrassed awkwardness, were now laced with panic and a sickeningly sweet desperation. David was the first to call, his voice cracking, almost unrecognizable from the man who had told me to go downstairs and avoid embarrassment. Mom, please, don't do this. You can't sell the cottage. It's Lily's future, her inheritance. Brenda didn't mean what she said. She was just stressed with the party. You know how she gets. He painted Brenda as a victim of circumstance, not an architect of cruelty. He pleaded with me to reconsider, to understand. He even tried emotional blackmail, reminding me of my duty to Lily, to the family. My son, who had stood by silently as I was publicly shamed, was now frantic at the prospect of losing a valuable asset. The raw fear in his voice was almost pitiable, a stark contrast to the casual dismissal he'd shown just days before. He must have realized the implications, the whispers among his powerful friends, the loss of face, the financial hit. It wasn't just about the cottage, it was about the shattered illusion of their perfect, generous family. Then Brenda called, her tone shifting wildly between saccharine pleading and thinly veiled threats. Mary, darling, you know how much we love you. This is just a misunderstanding. We want you to be part of our lives, of Lily's life. That cottage, it's perfect. Think of all the lovely summers we can spend there, all together, as a family. She spoke as if she hadn't just contemptuously flung my gift aside. She even suggested that I was being unreasonable and punitive, daring to imply that I was the one in the wrong. Her voice strained, a clear sign that her carefully constructed composure was cracking. I could almost picture her pacing her opulent living room, frantically trying to salvage her social standing. My lawyer, Ms. Chen, confirmed what I already knew. They were indeed trying every legal maneuver possible to stop the sale or invalidate my decision. They argued that the deed, once signed, was an irrevocable gift. Ms. Chen, a formidable woman, calmly informed them that my initial intent was conditional on respect and that their public actions constituted a breach of that understanding, giving us strong grounds to revoke. Their legal team, no doubt expensive and aggressive, was met with Ms. Chen's quiet, steely resolve. I listened to their increasingly desperate messages, their calls growing more frequent and insistent. I heard the genuine fear in David's voice, the barely contained fury beneath Brenda's false sweetness. But their pleas, once so capable of tugging at my heartstrings, now sounded hollow, devoid of true remorse. It wasn't about me. It was about the cottage, about the money, about their image. Their desperation grew so acute that they even resorted to sending Lily with handwritten letters, pleading with Grandma Mary to come back. The attempts were transparent, painful to witness, and utterly manipulative. I informed them of my decision to sell the lakeside cottage, my last significant asset, and move into a high-quality retirement community, embracing a life of peace and independence. Their continued pleas and attempts to reconcile were met with a calm, firm refusal. Each time they called, I reiterated my stance, my voice steady, my conviction unshakable. David, I'd say, the cottage is being sold. My decision is final. The funds will cover my living expenses in my new home. But Mom, the retirement community, it's so impersonal. Why not just live with us? We have plenty of room, David would counter, his voice rising in desperation. The idea of me, the useless old woman, living with them had once been unthinkable to Brenda. Now, the prospect of a free live-in housekeeper and nanny, especially one who had just given away a lakeside cottage, seemed suddenly appealing. The hypocrisy was astonishing, but I felt no anger, only a quiet resolve. My living arrangements are my choice now, David, I'd respond. I need peace, and I need independence, and I will have both. Their attempts to reconcile escalated into a desperate charade. Brenda, playing the role of the contrite daughter-in-law, started sending me extravagant flower bouquets, gourmet gift baskets, and even unsolicited apology cards filled with flowery, insincere prose. She tried to schedule lunch dates, coffee meetups, even offering to come clean my apartment, something she'd never once offered in all her years as my daughter-in-law. She even organized a small private dinner at a very exclusive restaurant, hoping to sway me with opulent food and an even more opulent setting. I politely declined, explaining I preferred my home-cooked meals and quiet evenings. It was a transparent performance designed to win back the cottage, not my affection. I rejected every attempt, politely but firmly. I returned the gifts. I declined the invitations. My resolve hardened with each transparent maneuver. One afternoon, Brenda and David showed up at my doorstep, unannounced. David looked haggard, his usually impeccable suit rumpled. Brenda, for once, was without her usual heavy makeup, her face pale and drawn. Lily, clutching a wilting bouquet of daisies, stood shyly behind them, looking utterly bewildered by her parents' distress. "Mom, please, we need to talk," David began, his voice choked with emotion. "We were wrong, so wrong, about everything. We've been such fools." He looked genuinely distressed, a shadow of the boy I once knew, finally peeking through the layers of corporate ambition and social pretense. "Grandma Mary, I'm sorry," Lily whispered, her eyes fixed on her shoes. My heart ached for her, innocent in all this, yet used as a pawn in her parents' desperate game. I gave her a soft, sad smile, a look that conveyed understanding without forgiveness for her parents. Brenda stepped forward, trying to force a tearful apology. Mary, I was a fool. I was stressed. I said terrible things. But we value you. We do. Just, please don't sell the cottage. It's for Lily. It's truly a beautiful gesture. Her eyes, however, kept darting towards the street, as if checking if any neighbors were watching this dramatic display of family contrition. The performance was failing, and she knew it. I looked at them, truly looked. David's regret was real, but it was mixed with a palpable fear of losing social standing and a valuable asset. Brenda's remorse was a performance, thinly veiled by her transparent greed. And Lily, poor Lily, was caught in the middle of a lesson her parents were desperately trying to unteach. My decision is made, I stated, my voice calm but unwavering. The cottage is being sold. I will not be staying here, and I will be moving into Golden Pines as planned. Brenda actually stomped her foot. But that's ridiculous. You'll be throwing away a family legacy. For what? To spite us? The mask finally slipped, revealing the raw resentment beneath. It's not about spite, Brenda, I replied, my gaze steady. It's about self-respect. Something, it seems, you and David have forgotten how to value. You taught Lily that worth is measured by possessions, by grand gestures. I'm teaching her that it's measured by dignity, by kindness, and by quiet strength. Lessons I hope she will actually learn. Their faces fell. They realized then that there was no arguing with me, no swaying me with their desperate pleas. My resolve was ironclad. They watched, defeated, as I closed the door to my apartment, leaving them on the doorstep, their desperate pleas fading into the quiet afternoon. The sale of the lakeside cottage went through without a hitch. The proceeds were substantial, more than enough to secure my comfortable future. My move to Golden Pines retirement community was seamless. My new apartment was small but bright, with a lovely view of a manicured rose garden. I had my own space, my own schedule, and a vibrant community of peers who valued genuine connection over superficial displays. I joined the book club, started a knitting circle, and even took up painting classes. Life was peaceful, fulfilling, and entirely on my own terms. My actions taught them a harsh lesson. True worth isn't measured by material possessions or social standing, but by quiet generosity and self-respect. They had dismissed the humble, scorned kindness, and in doing so, stripped themselves of an unexpected blessing. The bitter taste of regret, I knew, would linger with them far longer than the memory of any birthday cake. David and Brenda eventually stopped calling every day. The frantic pleas turned into occasional stilted voicemails, then sporadic text messages. They tried to visit me at Golden Pines, but I politely declined, citing my busy schedule of activities. I wasn't being cruel. I was simply protecting my peace. I allowed Lily to visit me, always making sure our time together was away from her parents, filled with quiet talks and gentle activities. I hoped, truly hoped, that she would remember these moments, the genuine connection, rather than the grand, empty gestures of her parents. My life at Golden Pines was a stark contrast to the chaotic, often superficial existence David and Brenda continued to lead. I'd occasionally see snippets of their lives in the local society pages. Brenda hosting another lavish gala, David launching another ambitious, high-stakes project. But the sparkle seemed to have dimmed. Their smiles in photographs looked strained, their eyes holding a subtle tension. The public humiliation at Lily's party had been a significant blow to their social standing, and despite their desperate attempts to recover, the whispers followed them. Their friends, those who had snickered at my expense, now secretly judged them for their behavior towards me. Their perfect facade had been irrevocably cracked. I heard through the grapevine that their financial situation, though still outwardly opulent, was more precarious than ever. David's risky investments weren't always paying off, and Brenda's insatiable need for luxury meant they were constantly chasing the next big deal, never truly secure. Their lives, once defined by accumulation, seemed now defined by a desperate struggle to maintain appearances. They were trapped in their own gilded cage, constantly striving for more, yet finding less contentment. Meanwhile, I found contentment in abundance. My garden flourished. My new friends were a treasure trove of wisdom and laughter. I learned to paint watercolors, capturing the vibrant colors of the sunsets over the golden fields surrounding golden pines. My heart was light, unburdened by expectations or the need for external validation. I was free. I had chosen peace over pretense, self-respect over social obligation. And in that choice, I found a richness far beyond any material wealth. My true sanctuary wasn't just a place, it was a state of mind, built on my own terms, free from the judgment and materialism of others. And so, the story of Mary, the woman who found her true worth and defied convention, reaches its quiet conclusion. Her journey reminds us that dignity, self-respect, and quiet strength can be the most powerful forces of all, capable of dismantling even the most entrenched prejudices. If Mary's unwavering spirit and unexpected triumph resonated with you, if her story inspired you to stand firm in your own truth, please consider liking this story, subscribing for more narratives that celebrate inner strength and resilience, and commenting below with your thoughts and reflections. Your insights are incredibly valuable to me, and I truly appreciate you joining me on this impactful journey. Thank you for reading, and I hope to connect with you again soon.